Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The hesitancy right this minute is the uncertainty.
Slumping home sales and perhaps a peak in prices. Why the bargains are still few and far between.
It was one of the most challenging and difficult moments in the history of our healthcare system or in any healthcare system.
Catching up on postponed surgeries, where BC stands and how long it will take.
The alternative to just having a car.
Wheeling out the e-scooter, the reality ahead as municipalities hop on board the craze.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. So slumping sales, rising interest rates, and a possible peak in prices. Amid signs the Metro Vancouver housing market is cooling, it may seem like the time to buy. But as Leanne Young reports, if you're expecting a bargain, don't hold your breath.
Realtor Adil Dinani is getting ready to list this brand new 5,500 square foot home in Coquitlam.
And you could mount a TV out there, so you could really entertain outside all year round.
The price, about $3.5 million. Hefty, but less than what he was counting on. Perhaps that number of 3.7 that we were hoping to achieve, and the market was, telling us we could potentially achieve in January, February, is probably something in the rearview mirror now. After nearly 18 months of record-breaking numbers, home sales across the Lower Mainland are no longer skyrocketing. And so we're going from an overheated market to what I would argue is now more of a balanced, normalized market environment. This is healthy. In Greater Vancouver, the Real Estate Board says home sales dropped 25% in April from the month before. And in the Fraser Valley, that number fell to almost 37%, its lowest level in nearly 2 years. Benchmark home prices creeped up only around 1% or less.
The hesitancy right this minute is the uncertainty, because first you get the Bank of Canada saying we're going to actively raise rates numerous times, but there's nothing black and white.
Interest rates have gone up twice this year. Experts predict more hikes, which will likely keep housing demand in check, but don't expect the market to suddenly crash.
Sure, interest rates provide a headwind to real estate, but inflation provides tailwind. Inflation is beneficial for real estate.
Pavlov says Canada's record high inflation is incentive to buy sooner because housing prices are forecasted to rise.
The assumption here is that house prices are going to increase at the rate of inflation, at least. Maybe not over the next month or two, who knows, but over a 5-10 year period.
For those who can afford to get into the market, a window of opportunity may be just ahead.
We're going to be going through, a normalization period, and probably a period where prices stabilize and potentially come back down to, reality.
Predictions in an ever volatile market. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, the province is trying to catch up on the thousands of surgeries delayed because of the pandemic. It's hiring more staff and keeping ORs open longer. And as Balpuri reports, BC's health minister calls the progress remarkable.
In order to deal with the impact COVID-19 would have on hospitals, it was a big step.
It means hospitals will only undertake urgent and emergency procedures and will postpone all non-urgent scheduled surgeries.
Thousands of British Columbians waiting for elective surgery would have to wait even longer.
It was one of the most challenging and difficult moments in the history of our healthcare system or in any healthcare system.
More than 2 years later, officials say BC's healthcare system has almost caught up. Operating rooms have had a record year.
Over 337,000 surgeries were completed in the 12-month period ending March 31st, 2022, the most surgeries ever completed in a single year in BC.
In the first wave of COVID-19, 32,400 surgeries were postponed. 99.8% have now been completed. That rate drops to 96% for waves 2 and 3 and to just under 79% for more recent waves of the virus.
It's a remarkable achievement.
Critics say the numbers government is touting don't include people whose surgeries have never been scheduled, let alone postponed.
The orthopedic surgeons came out and said that the wait times for knee and hip surgeries are just massive, and they're very concerned about it. They're yelling about it publicly, trying to get attention to the challenge.
The Liberal opposition says the NDP has failed to remedy the overwhelmed healthcare system in BC.
You've got Royal Inland Hospital in Kamloops operating on the weekend at 50% nursing capacity, putting, frankly, patients at risk, British Columbians at risk, and staff, frankly, are stressed out, burned out, etc.
To catch up with the backlog of surgeries, the province says it has hired more staff and extended operating room hours in many hospitals. Some now do weekend surgeries. In the past 4 weeks, it says, there have been no surgery delays in the province. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
And low-income British Columbians will still be able to access dental care thanks to millions of dollars in provincial funding. The government is giving not-for-profit dental clinics $2.8 million over the next 3 years to make sure access to dental care is available. There are 21 of these clinics across BC providing care for free or at reduced rates. These clinics provide services more than 47,000 times last year.
This funding will help bring stability to clinics as we continue to weather challenging times in the post-pandemic recovery period.
The funding will go directly to the BC Dental Association. It will help offset costs for materials, equipment, and dental lab fees. ICBC is backpedaling on its policy that asks cyclists, pedestrians, and other non-drivers to pay for vehicle damage in crashes where they were deemed partly responsible. The change comes after a Vancouver rider went public with his bill after he was hit. Dan Burrett joins us live to explain more. Dan, first, remind us what actually happened to this cyclist.
It has been quite an ordeal for Ben Bollinger. In late March, he said ICBC had billed him $3,700 for damage to a car's hood and windshield after a Mercedes ran a stop sign near Willow and 7th and hit him last summer. He was sent to hospital, it snapped his bike, it destroyed his helmet and phone, and he says he'll never have full motion of his right hand again. At the time, the insurer said it found Bollinger 50% at fault under its new no-fault model. But today, the province and ICBC say the insurer is changing some of its rules because of what happened to Bollinger. It will no longer send repair bills to cyclists and pedestrians when, for example, it has to split liability 50-50 because it's not clear what happened or who's at fault fully, if someone has been killed, or when a cyclist or pedestrian suffers severe or catastrophic injuries. ICBC also says it recently got a final police report on Bollinger's crash, and it now holds the driver fully responsible. Bollinger says the changes are a good first step, but argues it never should have been the rule in the first place. He hopes ICBC will offer income replacement up front instead of making him use his employer-paid sick leave first.
When I got that letter back in March, it was just so ridiculous that this is somehow within the realm of how ICBC was operating at that point. It feels good that, it's recognized that that is an unacceptable practice, and I'm glad that it is being discontinued.
ICBC says its new care-based model is just 1 year old and will keep looking to find ways to improve how it delivers, quote, enhanced care. It also says a committee of experts will look at claims involving a cyclist or pedestrian who were not severely injured, and that could mean fewer bills being sent to riders and walkers. Anita.
Dan Burrett live tonight. Thank you, Dan. Well, more small poultry flocks have tested positive for the highly contagious avian flu, this time in Richmond and Kelowna. These are the third and fourth small flocks that have contracted the virus. It's believed the virus is coming from infected migrating wild birds. The infected premises have been placed under quarantine, and BC's Ministry of Agriculture and Food has notified nearby producers as well. It's a sigh of relief today for dozens of people displaced in an apartment fire in Abbotsford yesterday who have now been able to return to get some of their stuff. 160 homes had to be evacuated after the fire tore through the building on Cardinal Avenue. Today, residents were given just enough time to grab a few items and assess the damage. That includes waterlogged floors and furniture and many ruined items, especially difficult for those without insurance.
I just have to buy everything I need back again with my own money. But, I mean, it's nothing super expensive, just the hassle of rebuying everything.
Restoration crews say there is at least 3 inches of water on some floors. Fire investigators are still working to figure out the cause. Well, it may have given you a bit of a shock today. The provincial government tested its Alert Ready system this afternoon. Many British Columbians got a ping on their phones at 1:55 p.m. today. The system had been upgraded to include warnings about impending floods and wildfires. It's already used in BC to warn of tsunamis and amber alerts. The Alert Ready system is tested twice a year in May and November, but the November 2021 test was cancelled because of BC's atmospheric river storm event. Court proceedings started back up today in the trial of Canadian recording artist Jacob Hoggard. Allegations dating back several years have the frontman of the rock band Hedley facing charges of sexual interference and sexual assault causing bodily harm. The CBC's Deanna Sumanak-Johnson has more on today's jury selection.
It's been 4 long years since singer Jacob Hoggard was charged with sexual assault, and now we finally have some news about his trial, which began on Monday in Toronto. The jurors for the trial have been chosen, and we now know that they will consist of 10 men and 4 women. 2 of those jurors will be randomly pulled from final deliberations. Jacob Hoggard pleaded not guilty to all the charges against him. These charges are connected to the incidents that allegedly took place in 2016, one involving a woman who was an adult at the time and one involving a minor.
Jacob, are you excited to have your day in court today?
In 2019, during a preliminary hearing, Jacob Hoggard pleaded not guilty and also requested a trial by jury rather than by a judge. And this is why it took this long for this trial to get started, because juried trials were postponed and put on hold during the COVID-19 pandemic. We got a chance to speak to Ingrid Grant. She is a criminal lawyer, and she said that having a trial by a jury rather than by a judge can actually have an effect. Here's what she had to say about that.
The benefit of a jury trial, a jury doesn't give you reasons. They just give you a verdict. And with a jury, the Crown doesn't have to just convince one person beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to convince 12 people.
So what can we expect in the days to come? The judge delivered her opening remarks today. Tomorrow, the Crown prosecutors will be delivering their opening remarks, as well as Jacob Hoggard's attorneys. They will be speaking as well. And then we should be hearing from the first of the accusers tomorrow and Friday. Tomorrow, there will also be an expert witness. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, it's a popular Metro Vancouver lake, no stranger to traffic jams and people fighting for parking. But now a pilot project is hoping to make access to Bunsen Lake a bit easier. Starting in June, there will be a parking reservation system at the lake, which is a BC Hydro reservoir. It's one of the most used recreational areas in the Lower Mainland. And Hydro says last summer, the parking lot usually filled up before 8 a.m. The hope is the new system will reduce congestion for locals and give visitors peace of mind that they won't have to turn around. Metro Vancouver has its first electric scooter ride-sharing program. Richmond joins the list of cities offering the service that's popular in places like Seattle and Los Angeles. And as John Hernandez reports, it's all part of the growing e-scooter craze that's seeing more and more riders hitting the road.
The roads in Richmond are making way for a new fleet.
What you will see here today is just the start.
These e-scooter hubs have been installed in select locations across the city. It's the first grab-and-go sharing program of its kind in Metro Vancouver, a service popularized in cities along the West Coast.
In the cities that we've operated so far, residents and visitors have really taken to our service as a way to get around, take those first mile, last mile connections.
After signing up, riders simply scan with their phone and take off. For your first 3 rides, the speeds on these scooters is capped at 12 kilometers an hour, so new riders like me can learn the ropes.
We look forward to working with other municipalities right across the Lower Mainland to bring a similar service to their city.
E-scooters are only legal in 8 BC municipalities as the province is in the midst of a 3-year pilot project. Vancouver is among the participants, but it won't greenlight any sharing programs yet. Instead, it's taking a more cautious approach and collecting feedback.
A lot of people are apprehensive about having these things on the streets. There's always horror stories. Oh, I saw this electric unicycle, electric scooter driving past it, large speed, insert large speed here, and it's just kind of educating the public on responsible riding, how to use these things, where to use these things.
This shop owner says he's been loading up on stock ahead of the summer after quickly selling out last year.
Most certainly the biggest challenge in the company is, staying on top of our supply chain and making sure that we're stocked well for this.
And prices at the pump are helping to push shoppers through the door.
I've been back to Toronto, I've been here, and I've seen people on, the unicycles, the scooters, and it just seems like a really good sort of alternative to just having a car.
BC's pilot project will end in 2 years, but these rides likely won't go anywhere. A popular form of transit that's only picking up more speed. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
And meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now. Joe, we've been having a lot of cool weather, unfortunately, but Metro Vancouver is still imposing those lawn watering restrictions. So why do we still need to conserve that water?
Yes, you're right, Anita. Those came into effect last Sunday and will be in place through to October. But experts say we need to start conserving water now, both for when our reservoirs are at their lowest in August and for a future that will continue to see dwindling snowpack. Let me remind you that Metro Vancouver's water all comes from a reservoir that takes that melting snow from a snowpack. And yes, we are in an average to above average snowpack across the South Coast, but we are seeing an acceleration in our snowpack dwindling with climate change. And that is a trend that will continue on top of our growing population. We're expected to see 1 million more people in Metro Vancouver in the next 30 years, still tapping into the same water from that same reservoir. And as far as the summer's forecast, yes, we're in a La Nina. We're expecting the next few months to be cooler and wetter than normal, but that snowpack will still melt. And it's August that we'll see those lowest levels right in line with a possible warm up. Let me take you to the snowpack that we're looking at right now across the province. We are, again, at or above seasonal. And overall, the province is at 120% of its average. So we are worried about flooding when we get into the spring melt, which may start as early as next week. I want to take you through the long-range forecast. Right now, we're waiting for that rain to track across from the Strait to Metro Vancouver. Steady rain overnight for us and through Thursday. Now, yesterday I talked about the potential for a big warm-up next week, but that there was some uncertainty. Here's the long-range pattern today. Keep your eye on those blue colors. Here's Sunday. Here's Monday. There's that bit of a warm-up. And then Wednesday, another cooler low moves down across the province. So there's sort of diverging models right now, a lot hanging on next week's forecast. As far as the next 24 hours go, certainty that it will be wet. We're looking at 40 to 60 millimeters of rain, higher amounts for the North Shore and the Tri-Cities, but generally soggy all day tomorrow. And that's thanks to this southwesterly flow that will keep the systems coming in. Tomorrow evening, we may see a bit of a break. You might just get a glimpse of the sun before it dips below the horizon. A few showers back on Friday, but overall the forecast for Friday into the weekend is cool, cloudy, but drier. We'll see those showers track into the interior tomorrow for Kelowna, Cranbrook at a 15, Prince George just a 9. So temperatures coming down right across the province tomorrow. And there it is, below seasonal after our soggy Thursday for Friday, Saturday. Keep an eye on Sunday. At least it'll be dry for any Mother's Day plans. And then here was our hope. And we are still seeing a clear out for Tuesday and Wednesday, along with some warmer temperatures. But the big question mark, Anita, will be, does that hold and we start our spring melt? Or do we have one more soggy and cool week? So stay tuned.
I'm not sure. Okay. We'll wait and see, Joe. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Turning south of the border now, divisions are deepening after a leaked draft document showing the U.S. Supreme Court could overturn abortion rights. The court's Chief Justice emphasizing the draft is not the final decision. Still, as the CBC's Mukta Gabrisalesa reports, the U.S. president is asking what other rights will be in danger
It's a smaller group outside the Supreme Court today, mostly made up of abortion rights activists. Now, there have been demonstrations right across the country defending Roe v. Wade. There have also been anti-abortion activists showing up as well.
For every abortion, for every choice, that's ending a human life. I mean, that's undeniable. The reality is that abortion kills a child, a human being.
This is ridiculous. I think we've gone 10 steps forward and now we're going 50 steps back. This is the catalyst for other things to happen if we don't stand up and fight back right now. There'd be backdoor abortions and women were dying because, the coat hangers, you see signs here with coat hangers, that's what used to happen.
President Joe Biden had more to say on this as well. He questioned what other rights could come under attack.
The guy's on the Supreme Court now. What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way that the decision is written? What are the next things that are going to be attacked?
If Roe v. Wade is overturned, then abortion rights will likely play into the midterm elections.
This is clearly something that Democrats will use and use to their advantage. The problem that they have is the inflation issue is probably more important in terms of motivating individual voters. We'll see what the rolling reaction is to the overturning of the Roe precedent.
For now, abortion remains legal in the U.S. until the Supreme Court has its final say. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Washington.
Overnight, Lviv in western Ukraine was hit by Russian missiles in the largest attack in the area since the war began. In the east, Russian forces are stepping up their siege of Mariupol. And with all of that, Ellen Morrow is looking at the ongoing efforts to get people out of the city.
Firefighters battle the aftermath of a Russian missile strike in Lviv in western Ukraine. Electrical stations powering railways the target. Russia intent on blocking the key supply routes for getting foreign weapons to the east. Still, the governor of Lviv, Maxim Kositsky, says we will do everything possible to remain the pathway for life and cargo. The strikes on Lviv were just one of several missile attacks overnight. In all, 6 railway power stations across central and western Ukraine were hit. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the strikes demonstrate Russian frustration. Various cities have once again become targets, says Zelensky. Russia is venting its powerlessness because they can't beat Ukraine. But Ukrainian military officials say Russia's efforts to do just that are again intensifying. Russia is trying to increase the tempo of its offensive, says this Ukrainian Defense Ministry spokesman. The enemy is regrouping and reinforcing its troops. The Azovstal steel factory is again under attack, says Mariupol's mayor. The fighting so intense, he says he can no longer reach the Ukrainian fighters inside. While more than 100 civilians have been rescued, hundreds more, including 30 children, the mayor says, remain trapped inside the plant, with little idea of when, if, they'll be able to get out. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Kyiv.
The federal government is looking to improve 2 of its biggest housing programs, with concerns that they have fallen flat for Canadians in need of low-cost units. As the CBC's Shayna Luck explains, the main concern is around incentives for rental construction.
A new affordable housing development is underway in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. 12 of the homes to be built here will be financed by a construction loan from the federal government, but it'll take more than that to fill the demand.
We see it growing all the time. Like even the data that we look at from like 2020 to 2022 it shows like a need.
That's why some housing advocates are cautiously optimistic after the federal government's recent budget announced changes to its 2 biggest housing construction loan programs. One is a program for developers. It's been slammed for building units that are far too expensive for the average renter. The housing minister recently said that will be addressed.
It's some changes to make the program even more affordable.
This housing consultant says the government no longer needs to subsidize market-priced units, and he welcomes the change requiring developers to create more units below market rates.
By 2019, we really didn't need it anymore. It took them 2 years to figure that out and basically make the decision.
The other program is for nonprofits, but the application was so rigorous and slow, many builders dropped out.
It was a very, very difficult game. You had to be a real glutton for punishment.
The government now says it's going to make the process easier and faster. Anything that creates more affordable units is good news for this renter. It's taken him months to find something in his budget.
It's this cloud of worry that you can't really shake.
He's got a new home, but only because friends allowed him to sublet their place for a few months.
It really feels like the game has changed in Halifax. You can't really rely on the market to provide you with appropriate housing now.
While the budget promised action, the government hasn't released details about when those program changes will take effect. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax. Despite hopes that all new cars and light-duty trucks sold in Canada will be zero emission by 2035, there are new warnings that the country's electrical grid isn't up to the task. As the CBC's David Thurton explains, a new report says significant improvements are needed in generating capacity and distribution before the electric dream becomes a reality.
Kim Nelson loves her electric vehicle, but not how long it takes to juice up fully. 3 days on her slow charger if it's drained. Even if she wanted to upgrade to a faster charger, the power lines on her street don't support the electrical load.
So we have to be really vigilant about making sure we're always charging. And I think if the government wants to move everyone in the direction of electric vehicles, this is going to be a much bigger challenge for people that live in suburban communities or people that live in the north, because you get so much less of a charge in the winter or in cold weather.
For reasons such as these, a new report says Canada's electricity systems aren't ready to take on the expected surging demand. Significant investments are needed, one of the report's author says, because otherwise
there could be challenges for reliability. That means certain outages, certain technical issues in our grids.
Canada needs to make what the report calls a big switch, connecting interprovincial and territorial grids so electricity can be shared, doubling or tripling capacity by generating more clean electricity, mostly solar and wind. But nuclear energy can't be forgotten because renewables aren't always reliable, atomic energy advocates say.
So nuclear provides that ultra-reliable electricity. It delivers over 90% of its capacity, and we can time it to deliver when demand is the greatest.
Whatever powers our low-carbon energy future, advocates and researchers agree the federal government needs to step up with more money and new policies.
The federal government is going to be all in terms of the engagement with provinces and territories as we move forward. But let's remember that is an area of provincial jurisdiction.
Without that strong leadership to improve charging options, some electric vehicle enthusiasts fear their vehicles will remain in the minority. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
A Vancouver Island senior is going the extra mile for charity this week. He's walking around his care facility 103 times, one lap for each birthday.
Thank you all for turning out. Lovely morning.
If any of this sounds familiar, it's because John Hillman has done it twice before. The former World War II vet plans to walk 10 laps a day for 10 days. Any funds raised are going to save the children in hopes of helping kids and families affected by Russia's war in Ukraine. 103 laps for his 103rd birthday, still making a difference at that age. Very impressive. Well, that is it for CBC Vancouver News tonight. A reminder, we are still online only this week because of the NHL playoffs, so you'll find us here, Facebook, YouTube, or CBC Gem at 6 o'clock. Have a great evening.